that there's a song, you should have seen it in color, and, you know, watching the pictures of Dad's service and going through the old boxes of pictures like we all did as kids, right? A lot of stories to be told. And so wanted to do this, and some of you younger kids hadn't had the opportunity, and some of you that have joined the family recently didn't have the chance to go to Meemaw and Pawpaw's. And of course that was my mom and dad, but there was tons of fun at that house. And most of it Mom didn't know about. That's going to be our next video to her. And we're going to get together one time, and we're going to sit and tell our stories of what happened at Meemaw's house that she doesn't know about, and let her hear those stories. Because there's a bunch of them, right, Eddie?
I don't know.
I'll tell one briefly, then I'll let Mom get started. But me and Eddie was grounded. I know that starting out, that's probably makes you think I'm lying, but Eddie was grounded, and me and Brian were at the house, and Eddie, you know, he masterminded these things for us to get in trouble, and so he took us down the road. It was like, what was it, about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and we tied about 6 milk jugs together, and we throw them out in the middle of the road, and when a car would get close, we'd jerk them out of the road. Cars swerving. Of course, we thought it was funny, but we didn't, you know, we're too young to realize that we were putting people's lives at risk. But then we got bored with that. The cars were coming, you know, less and less. So one of us would lay down on the edge of the highway, and the other two would stand over him like this, looking at him when the cars come by like he was hurt. And then, you know, we'd laugh. And then we're out there doing that, and this car hits the brakes, and we look up, and the spotlight comes on, and it's a state trooper. Eddie, I was on the ground. Brian and Eddie goes, "Trooper!" And there's a cotton field there, and they go flying through the cotton field, and I get up and take about 3 fast steps, and I fall into the ditch face first at the bottom of the road there. And so I'm laying flat on my back like this, and the trooper's car stops right there, and he's shining that light over the top of me out in that field. And he sat there for about 5 minutes, seemed like forever. Finally, he drove away, and they come up there like, "Where are you at?" And I said, "I fell in the ditch. I never moved." But apparently we got by with that one because nothing ever came of it. But there's lots more stories like that, Mom, that you may hear about later. But anyway, this is Mom. We'll let her go ahead and take it away. She's got some pictures to show. You'll be able to zoom in on those from there, won't you? Mm-hmm. So, but just hold the pictures up when you get to them, and
well,
Phil.
They're so small, some of them so small you won't be able to see them.
Okay. Well, we'll just do our best.
This is we lived in the first 20 years of our marriage, we lived in like 10 different houses. Now, one of them we lived in twice, but I can't remember which one it was. But anyhow, we lived in a house, the first house we met at Jericho Church, is where we met at. And Melanie Puckett, her name was Rush then, was his cousin, and she's the one that introduced us. And this picture was taken before we ever got married. All of you probably have seen it before. That was us before we got married. And the first house we lived in was in front of Jericho Church up in the field a little ways. And every Sunday, Alvis had a little pedal tractor, and a little John Deere pedal tractor. And every Sunday morning, Jackie Joyce would bring his mother to church, and then he would come over to our house and push Eddie on the tractor. And the next one we lived in, that one was a 4-room house, and one of them leaked. One of the rooms leaked real bad. And the next one we moved in was the William house. AJ and his daddy rented a little bit of land up north of where his mom and dad lived, and then him moved up there, and it was a 4-room house. One of them rooms leaked, and the back door had under the door was a gap like that, and it was to the north, and you could see under the house through the floor. And the next house we lived in was a little house that, well, the first house that Craig and Vonda lived in was on the farm I lived whenever me and AJ got married, and where Bryce lived for a while. And on down from the big house was another little house like the one Craig lived in. We lived in that one for a little while. And then we moved up to Alwanda Schultz house. She was up just a little ways down from the Elam house, just a few yards down through the Elam house. And then we moved in a house on 6th Ditch, which was just a little ways from there. And then we moved in a house on Miss Love's place, which was down where McKelvey's lived. Y'all don't know that, but that's where Godby's live now.
No, Rollins is living there.
And we lived in their house. And then we moved over to 2 Ditch. That was where we lived when Ricky started the school. And he hated school. And he would run whenever, he'd stay until the school bus stopped, and then he'd take off running. And Eddie'd have to run him down. And I seen Lee Joyce get off the bus one day. Alvis had to run him down. And Lee Joyce had to get off the bus one day and help him run him down. And then we moved to the Gray House on 62 Highway, which was right across from where Miss Butler teacher lived, but it's almost to 6th Ditch from where I live now. And while we lived there, I got a job and went to work because we was nearly starving. He worked for the highway department, and he made $1,200 a month. And that's what we had to live off of. So I had to go to work. And Charlotte was 3 years old, and Mark was 5, and I didn't want to leave my babies, but I had to. So I went to work, and then we moved over on 4 Ditch from there. And that was the 9th house we lived in, was down on 4 Ditch. And that's where we lived when we finally got a house built and moved in the house. That was our 10th place to live. And I've got pictures of most everybody. This is y'all none of you ever knew your grandma Earnheart, but that's Charlotte when she was a baby with her grandma Earnhardt. And this is Alvis and Rick in the house, at the house on the Elam farm. Old back porch was about to fall in. And that's Alvis and Ricky. One of them's riding a tricycle, and the other one's riding a tractor.
Just racing.
And this is Charlotte's wedding picture. Charlotte, can see your wedding picture.
She ain't changed a bit.
What year was that?
Which wedding number was that?
That was her.
That was first.
Hey, everybody was thinking it, I was just saying.
That was in 1974.
1974.
Now this is Jericho Church like it was when we met. It don't look like that anymore, but that's the old Jericho Church where we met, and that was one of the homecomings. A lot of people, and that time me and AJ went on a picnic with 2 other couples, and Charlotte and Eddie or Mark aren't here, and Charlotte's grandma's holding her, and Mark's sitting down the front. But I got several of those, and I never knew but one grandpa. I only had one grandpa, I never had a grandmama. And this was my grandpa Vadir, and he came from a well-to-do family, and they were French, and had a lot of money, but whenever they come over on their boat, they couldn't bring it all. But I want to show you this too. This is my mom and dad whenever they got married, and she was 15. And this is her and her baby sister.
Tell the story of how Grandpa and Grandma met and the number of siblings you had.
Oh, okay. My mom and dad, the way they met, my dad had was working for my mom's dad on the farm, and that's the way they met. And he had already been married twice, and he had three kids. And he had two different wives. His first wife died, and he married her sister, and they wasn't married but a few months till she died. And then the third baby died then. And then he married my mom, and she wasn't but 15. He was 10 years older than my mom. And my daddy had 16 kids, my mama had 14. So, I'll show you. Oh, this was I lost my baby brother when he was just 18 months old. This is him. That's the first house we lived in Missouri. And that's the first car that was in our family. I don't know what kind it was, but it belonged to one of my brother-in-laws. And that's my baby brother.
Bobby? His name is Bobby?
No.
Bobby,
How old were you, Grandma?
how old was I? Well, I got a picture. I don't know where it's at now. I was in this picture. You mean whenever my baby brother died? I was just started to school. No, yeah, I just started to school. That house we lived in there was we walked. We had to walk to school, and I don't know how far it was. It seemed like miles and miles to me, but it's probably about 2 miles. And you could take a shortcut and go down the railroad track and take a shortcut. Wasn't as far. And of course, I didn't like to do that because we had to go over a railroad trestle. And an old railroad trestle's got the opening between every one of the cross ties, you know. And I was scared to death I was going to fall through there. So I would get down and crawl and cry, and they'd keep saying, "Doorbell, there's a train a-coming, there's a train a-coming," and I just cry louder and crawl faster. But I hated that. And we went to school to a one-room school. Every grade was in one room. My brothers and sisters and me was all in the same room, same teacher. So, and I never will forget, I got my first whipping, I guess, when I was in the first grade, because I didn't know any better. And my sister went home with her friend at noon. Her friend just lived a little ways from the school, and she went home with my friend for dinner. And when they come back, they had a cherry tree, and she picked a handful of cherries and gave them to me when they got back to the school. And when I went in, I was eating them cherries. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to eat during class. Well, then this teacher gave me a spanking. So I always hated teachers after that. I never had a teacher I liked. I hated them all. There's something else you want me to tell?
Do any of y'all have questions or want information, clarification? Could you just tell us the names of all your brothers and sisters?
Okay, my oldest brother's name was Charlie, and his wife's name was Mamie, and he had 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls. Jean and Jerry and Violet and Peggy. And then my next brother's name was Delmer, and his wife's name was Laura. And they had 5 kids. They had 3 boys and a girl. 4 kids. They had, 4 kids. 3 boys and a girl. And then her name was Betty, and Jake and Bob and Jackie. And then my next brother's name was Aziel, and he had 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. His wife's name was Jessie. The kid's name was Barbara and James and J.W. And then my sister Goldie, she just had 2 kids. She married her first time she married was Clyde Campbell, and he died before she ever had any kids. She was expecting her first one when he died, and she married again, and she had 2 girls, Beverly and Rosalie, and then next was Jack, and Jack had 2 boys and 2 girls. Had 3 girls. He had Jackie and Danny, and then he had Lavonna, and a Shauna, and a Laura, and Lori. So then Earl, of course y'all know Earl had 7 kids, and he had 3 boys and 2 girls. No, he had 4 boys, didn't he? He had Ronnie and Tony and Donnie and
Donnie, Ronnie, Tony, John.
yeah, and John. He had
4 boys.
4 boys and 3 girls.
And Marina and Jerry.
Then I had my sister Helen had 2 girls and 2 boys. Ronnie and Denny Taylor, and then Patty and Pam was her kids. And then I had my brother Edgar. He was distant from the family. He went to service, and when he come home, we had moved over to here in southeast Missouri, and he still lived over at Neelaville. And he didn't come around much, and so we wasn't never around him much, but he had 3 boys and moved to St. Louis when those boys was young, and they was in a lot of trouble, so we didn't see much of them. But then my sister Naomi was just older than me, and she just had 2 kids, a girl and a boy, Janet and Tommy. And then, of course, y'all know how many I had. And then Leroy had 2 boys and a girl. And then Geraldine never was married. So that was my family. And I'm the only one left.
We lived in a house by McKelvey's twice.
What?
The house we lived in twice was one across the road from McKelvey's.
McKelvey's, yeah. I think
Is
it
that
was
the
too.
house we moved in
You
twice?
lived there
I'm sure it was too.
I couldn't remember which one.
It was one
But
where
when
the,
we lived in that one, the funny story about that one was, we, in the bathroom was a closet. And at one time, they had a pump in that closet. But it wasn't in there when we moved in, but that's the first house we ever lived in that had a bathroom too. And we'd been somewhere, I don't remember where we had been, but Mark was he was about 4 or 5 years old.
I remember that story.
And he was eating something, and he had it on his hands. And he run ahead of everybody and run to the bathroom and to wash his hands. And he started screaming, and we run in there, and there was rats running every which way.
One run up his pants leg.
You know, well, it didn't get,
I remember that.
It didn't get on, it run up and jumped over in the bathtub.
Yeah.
The wash basin was right by the bathtub.
He was
It ran up his
screaming.
leg and jumped over in the
I
bathtub.
remember that story.
Anyhow, I would have died probably. But anyhow, whoever had that pump in the bathroom, it had holes in there. And apparently we hadn't covered them over then at that time. So, I can't remember any other stories. You got any others you want me to tell?
What about y'all? Y'all got any questions?
So your side of the family would be where we all got so good at having kids. I said your side of the family would be where we all got so good at having kids.
Well, I guess so, but AJ's mom and dad had 4. They had 2 boys and 2 girls.
Yeah, that's not near as many as 16.
And they lost one too, yeah.
You got any stories to tell on your kids that, things you can think of that they did that was humorous or?
I'm sure she could tell a lot on Alice and Eddie.
Well, maybe you ought to stand up and tell them. There's so much that I don't know, and whenever you grandkids,
That was mean to me.
whenever y'all make this video, I want you to tell me who pulled the string out of the fan in the front bedroom.
Uh-oh,
I don't know which one of them it
Caitlin
was.
knows.
Of course, they didn't know. Who knows? Do you know? Well, I can't even remember which grandkid was there, but anyhow, they was playing on the bed. And when I went in the bedroom to turn the fan on, the chain was broken. What was that?
Tim remembers it happening, but he's not sure who did it.
I vaguely remember us being there.
You don't remember who done it?
No, I don't. It might have been me. I don't know.
What's that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
Pete
waiting on
did
you.
it.
I remember that.
They were probably making us play Deer Hunter. Yeah, Pete, we were probably playing Deer Hunter.
Oh, I didn't tell you about the time that, that's when we lived in that gray house there, across from Miss Butler, just down from where my house is now. One Sunday, Lance and Eric Dale come home with Craig and Eddie from church. And, they was out playing, of course, I wasn't paying any attention to them, but they was playing cowboys and Indians. And that-
That's in the house where we're at now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right, that's where we live now. Anyhow,
Eddie's first
Eddie
police
and,
report.
Eddie and
At
Eric
age
was,
12.
they was the Indians, I guess. Cause he shot Craig with a stick, a weed.
A stick.
That stick, sharpened.
Yeah.
Eddie, Craig and Lance was riding the bicycles, and they hid in the fence row and shot him when they went by and shot, it stuck in his gums.
It went through my jaw and hit my gums and come out my mouth.
And
I
they
thought I
literally
caught
got
it
a
with my
police
teeth.
report on it at the
Yeah.
hospital.
Right.
They
At
called
the-
the state patrol in.
Eddie's first police report at the age of 12. I go home and tell him the cops are coming to get you.
Charlotte told me that in the car, and I said, "Dang, I'm 12 years old. They ain't come down here." And the trooper pulled up, and I was like, "Oh." He went in the hospital. I thought, "Okay, he ain't here for me." And just a couple minutes later, he tapped on that window, and I looked, and there he was. "Are you Eddie?" I didn't talk to you.
They
On the
thought
way
he,
home, then I told him, I said, they're gonna arrest you, they're gonna come and get you, boy. He sat back there in that back seat, he didn't say nothing all the way home.
but
He was probably good. for
he
2
shot
weeks.
me, and I thought I caught it in my teeth, so I thought it was cool. When I went to pull it forward, and it turned my head sideways. So I pulled it out, and we jumped off the bicycles, and I started running home. And Eddie and Eric and Lance is all running behind me, and Eddie and Eric's yelling, "Don't tell Mom! Don't tell Mom!" And they catch up to me and they kick my feet and trip me so that they can see if I'm lying or not. And they hold me down and pry my hands off my jaws to look, and they're like, and Eric goes, "Oh gosh, Eddie, you did hit him. You're gonna be in trouble." And that's when Mom, I was trying to, close to crossing the fence and getting back in our yard, and Mom heard it and come out there, and that's when, we couldn't keep that one a secret, I don't guess.
Eddie's was always, don't tell Mom and Dad, don't tell
Yeah.
Mom and Dad.
But
I'll be in
my
trouble.
second grade picture, I had a Band-Aid right here, and I turned where you could see it. Around, had a Band-Aid across the holes, all they did for it. He owed me a permanent tooth too, cause it killed that one, it never came in.
Everybody wonders why I like Fords. I got a story about Mom and Dad. We had a 50 model Chevrolet truck, stick, and if anybody ever drove one, it's got a button on the Ford you push to start it. And we had a Ford pickup. Well, the Chevrolet wouldn't start, so Dad pulled the Ford around in front of it, bumper to bumper. Mom's gonna start the Chevrolet, but she turns the key on and she hits the starter with the gear. And Dad's standing between them, just pinned his legs between two trucks. Mom's there holding the starter down, spin the wheels. Dad's always, "Stop, stop, stop. What you say? Stop."
That was the first attempt.
He limped over to the porch and sat down. He couldn't walk about an hour. Mom, I didn't know you was standing there.
You got anything on any of the other kids? Surely you got some Elvis or Charlotte stories.
Good child.
I remember when first time we lived in the Elam house, Alice and Ricky was just little. Rick was about 2 years old, and I was standing at the kitchen window, and I don't know what Alice had done to Ricky, but anyhow, he was always picking on him. And, Ricky was picking on Alice.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. Anyhow, I was standing at the kitchen window, and the window was open, and Rick walked by the window, and he had a big old stick in his hand, and I heard him say Elvis. And he was just about 2 years old when he was after Elvis with it.
I remember a
My
story
first
where
road
Barbell
race.
had a broomstick in her hand after Alice and Ricky.
When we first started racing, we did on 4 ditch. My shop was a big old tree with chain horse in it, we had a 220 wheeler lead lantern down on the tree. And I don't remember what we was doing, but Rick got mad at me. He started swinging chopping axe at me. I stuck my belly and it just grazed my shirt. Got back at his swing, grazed my shirt. Finally I got over his forehead and got the hammer axe out of his head. But he was trying to cut me with the chopping axe. We went to the racetrack.
Well, you thought you was boss of all of us, just so
Yeah,
you
I
know
was.
that.
I was. You shouldn't have let them done that. It's your fault, you know. That's what I got. Yeah. Why'd you let her do that for? But when we went to the races, all the wheels, we made reverse rims out. We cut the centers out, we held them back in, of course, it's all crooked, out of the way, out of balance, everything else. And we pulled it to the track with one of Dad's tugboat ropes. Rick drove the race car and I pulled him because he wasn't 13 or 14. I pulled him 70 miles an hour. He'd ride the brakes, I just give the car gas, I pulled it to a Pontiac car, I just give it more gas and drag him faster.
Many a fights at that
But we had
racetrack.
fun.
Many a fights at that racetrack.
Oh, yeah, and one night, I had a fight, Dad had a fight, Rick had a fight, Donnie Dale had a fight.
Ronnie did?
Tony was there that night
Tony
too.
had a fight.
Yeah.
All of it, at the same time, one after the other at the same time.
Yeah, I watched all of them.
Yeah. We won them all too, didn't we?
I was on top
It
of
was
the dock
inspiring,
watching.
wasn't it, Eddie?
We won them all, didn't
Really inspiring, wasn't it?
Yeah, well,
we? Donnie went with Jim McMillan, and then Scott McMillan turned around and told Tony what sorry SOB that Donnie was. But Tony whooped his butt.
And he laid him out.
Well, anybody got any more questions or input?
What year did you and Grandpa get married?
49.
And how old were you?
I was 17.
And Grandpa was?
17.
That was right at the end of World War II, to put that into perspective.
He had to lie to get license. He lied and said he was 18.
And y'all eloped, didn't you?
Well, no, we didn't elope. Mom and Dad went with us, and
Oh,
so
did
did
they?
his mom.
What was your childhood like? I mean, as far as these kids have all types of cell phones and things to do, what was your childhood like and what did y'all do for entertainment? What were your chores and when did you start them? Give us a little bit of that kind of
Oh,
background.
my goodness, we had, our main job, when I got any size, was while Mom and Dad was going to town on Saturday, me and Naomi had to mop and wax all the floors. And we would get
How old were you?
oh, probably 10, 11, 12, something like that. Anyhow, we'd take our cats, we had cats, and we'd get that, the floor polished good and slick, and then we'd take the cats and put paper on their feet and put rubber band around it and put them on that, and boy, you should have seen them cats. They just crazy, yeah. And I won't forget one time when we would get up on top of the house and play while Mom and Dad was gone, up on top of the house and race and everything else. And Naomi was up in the loft. We got up in the loft and shining flashlights around and was chasing that light up in the loft. And Naomi missed a rafter and hit the plank that was the ceiling, and a plank fell down in the living room, right where my grandpa sat all the time. And Mom and Dad was gone to town. Of course, that was made a terrible mess in the house. And whenever Mom and Dad come back, Naomi said, well, I'll tell him I throwed a stick of wood up and knocked it down. I said, no, Naomi, that won't work because it fell down from up there. That ain't going to work. But anyhow, we got in big trouble for that. And then we would get on the top of the house while he was gone and run around, and we'd watch see when they was coming down the road, we'd run, jump off the house.
Sounds familiar, don't it?
I talked to Rick, with Grandma and Grandpa Earnhardt lived in Culan, and while they was going to town on Saturday, I talked Rick into using an umbrella for parachute. Really work, you know, go chain and everything. He got up and jumped off and got the hose out, 50 front tooth out. Umbrella folded up.
That was out of the barn, wasn't it?
That was shot,
Yeah.
garage building.
Yeah.
Just got one tooth though, you get two of them.
But, one of my jobs on a Saturday, whenever I was a smaller, too little to mop, what have you, we had to take the silverware out, and we had a drain ditch from the pump, and we had to take the silverware out and polish it in the dirt. That's the way we polished our silverware. Scrubbed it in the dirt, took the little dirt, scrubbed it.
How many, well, I remember you telling some story about using dressers for beds for your siblings,
Dresser drawers.
dresser drawers.
Well, yeah, that's been done, pull a drawer out and make a bed for a baby.
How many babies in your family slept in the dresser drawers, and how
Oh,
did
I
y'all
have,
manage
I have
that?
no idea. I have no idea of that. Because I had a lot of aunts and uncles and cousins, and we just always had a big family.
Always got together. Always got together for 4th of July.
Well, no, just once in a while, whenever I was growing up, but after I got any size and our sisters and brothers got any size, they all come home on a Sunday, every Sunday. Most of them come in and Mom had to feed them home,
Fried chicken.
yeah.
Grandma, do you have a story on why you're claustrophobic?
Yes, I have that story. That was while we still lived in Arkansas. And we lived on the railroad track, and I was just a baby. I don't know, probably a year, maybe 2 years old. I doubt if I was 2. But anyhow, my mother always had to pick the geese and the ducks and everything and save those feathers and make feather beds. Our beds, instead of mattresses, we had feather beds. What have you, so she had a big box of feathers she was saving. She'd have to pick them and save the feathers till she got enough for a feather bed. And we had a big box of feathers sitting in the closet. And we had lived right on the railroad track. We had a lot of bums come to our house. And while Mom was gone, why, of course, she left me with Helen and Leona, and left us little kids. And a bum would come, why they'd, instead of answering the door, they would run and hide, and they'd take me in that closet, and they said I was a big crybaby. I was a ball bag. I always cried after my mother, and so they said I'd start crying. They'd stick me down in them feathers, and they said when they pulled me back out, I was be wet with sweat and had feathers sticking all over me. They'd brush me off, and I'd catch my breath, and they'd stick me back down in there. So I wondered for years why I had claustrophobia. And then after I got grown, they was telling it one time at the house, and I said, now I know why I have claustrophobia, because y'all tried to smother me to death when I was a baby.
What number are you as far as your siblings?
Huh?
What number are you?
I'm number 10.
Number 10.
And the last one
Last one alive.
alive, right?
I'm the last one you left, yeah.
They've all passed except her.
Yep.
Wow.
What, Geraldine,
Leroy and Geraldine and Bobby were all younger than me.
but Geraldine was the last one to pass.
Right.
This past year.
Yeah.
right. Yeah, and
November, December.
she out-survived them all. Be 91 on January 3rd, right?
Well, then,
Yep.
it was a big family, and they used to take turns throwing me up in the air and catching me. Gotta make my head touch the ceiling. And one get tired and pass it to somebody else. Aunt Geraldine, Uncle Leroy, Uncle Kenny, my Aunt Peggy, every one of them throw you up the ceiling.
Aunt Geraldine wanted to see your head hit the ceiling, I'm sure. She was rough.
I couldn't catch my breath, just keep throwing it.
And Granny Dale catch chicken. If you went over there for Sunday dinner, you could be guaranteed she'd be outside, catch chicken, wring a snack, and throw it on the ground and watch it flop, and have a big tub of hot water there. When it got through flopping, she'd stick it down in that hot tub of water and pluck the feathers, and that's what you had for dinner. Fried chicken.
I pulled many of them heads off. We
I
had them
mean,
too, didn't we?
but I watched them.
We had yards full of chickens all the time.
I pulled many of them's heads off, I didn't ring them. I wasn't good at that, but I put them down, put
on the ground and it'd be
a broomstick over their head and then pull their head off.
Yeah.
That's the way I taught them.
Grandma Earnhardt got us all baby chickens for Easter one year.
I remember.
You remember them? Well, they got
Colored.
me, every time outside they flogged you. They fly into you and grab you by the right leg and pick you and deer claw into you. Got wintertime, they roosted up a tree, they got up in their legs froze to the tree. Got an ice storm, they stayed there about 4 or 5 days, we wouldn't get them down. When they got down, they walked like this. They couldn't catch you no more though.
Karma, right?
When I was a kid and our families did get together, like on the 4th of July, they would dig a big pit in the ground
Roast pig.
and barbecue, or roast or whatever you call it, a pig.
That's what we were planning on doing with that big hoe we dug.
Y'all was gonna go right here.
Tim ain't got nothing to say about that either.
Ignore that one.
That
While
big
old
hoe
guys
I
trying to
dug.
dig the china in mom and dad's backyard.
Yeah, it was a pretty big one.
All summer long.
And Grandpa would talk about.
Grandpa messed it all up, though,
He
didn't he?
was so mad at us over that. 30 years later, it's still mad at
Does anybody else have any questions or stories you wanna share? All right, we'll, plan on maybe, having a grandkids festival sometime, maybe this summer, and we can sit around and record all the grandkids' stories of what happened at Meemaw's, and we can share some of those stories. Does that sound good to y'all? I mean, this part, I think, is more important than the gifts and the food, and sometimes we get here and we're just in a hurry, we get busy, we wanna eat, and then everybody gets away, but I think it's good to hear these stories and learn more about your family, so. All right. I guess that's it. You got any closing remarks, Mom?
No, I was just sitting here looking at Sarah and thinking, one time she would come home and from school at my house, and I was at Dexter. And I had forgot about the time, and I looked at my watch, and it was almost time for the bus. And I drove as fast as I could, getting back home. See, I got home, she was sitting out on the front porch. By herself.
What would you expect her to do?
How old were you, Sarah?
Well, I would've hid. If I'd been her, I would've went and hid. I wouldn't want nobody to know that I was there by myself.
How old would I have been?
Well, you just started school. What was she, in the first
Kindergarten.
grade or?
Because I remember one time I sat outside your house too when y'all had CJ. And CJ was in that back bedroom and scared the daylights out of me. So I ran back out front and sat on that porch.
Oh,
And when you got home, I was like, I kinda need some help. I had an accident. And that was, I didn't go in that house with CJ.
I played chase with CJ around the garage and the laundry room, trying to get in because he wouldn't let me in from school.
Well, CJ was nice, but he was kind of terrifying.
Grandma left Grandpa at church one day and drove all the way.
Yes.
I didn't drive very far. I didn't get out of town.
And you tried to run over him at Ryan's once.
God,
You
it says
let
I
him
did.
and dude out of the car,
I
and he had one leg on the ground, just getting the second one out, and you took off.
Well, he was too slow.
People live up, you pinned him between the trucks.